So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session of Safe Workplaces Dialogues. And as you all know, it's a platform where industry leaders, HR professionals, legal and compliance experts come together to engage in meaningful discussions on workplace safety, inclusivity, best practices for fostering safe and empowering work environments. I'm Shrimoy, currently serving as the Chief Content Officer at Lawcubator, and I will be the host for today's session. Slightly under the weather, so please bear with me if I cough too much. Now, before we begin, let me introduce you to Lawcubator a bit. I promise I'll be quick. So, Lawcubator is a SaaS-based platform that helps organizations seamlessly manage legal compliance and HR regulations. This is a one-of-a-kind platform that provides employees with access to e-learning courses on critical topics like PoSH, DEI, whistleblowing, and many more. One of the standout features is the integrated complaint resolution system, which allows employees to confidentially report issues related to, say, POSH, discrimination, and other related issues to the concerned authority directly. So, for example, in case of POSH, if you raise a complaint, it goes to the internal committee. So, and these complaints are quick, transparent, and very confidential. The platform is built that way. Now, coming back to today's topic, which is POSH compliance in remote and hybrid workplaces. Now, as you all know, we're just discussing about COVID, that it's already been 5 years since COVID. But remote and hybrid work models are still quite the norm, and organizations must rethink how they ensure a safe, respectful, and legally compliant virtual workplace. So, our discussion today will cover practical insights and actionable strategies to tackle the emerging challenges in this area. As you can see, we have a very distinguished panel of experts with us today, and let me introduce them without any further delay. So, starting with Advocate Noopur Singhal. She is a dedicated legal professional with over 17 years of experience in civil litigation and more than 8 years in workplace safety. As the chairperson of the local committee, PoSH Local Committee of the New Delhi district, she actively works to create inclusive and legally compliant workplaces. She specializes in end-to-end compliance, from developing gender-neutral workplace policies, forming ICs, to training leadership teams and resolving sexual harassment complaints. She is also the founder of Sashakta Minds and leads a team that provides strategic legal guidance to organizations on POSH compliance and workplace inclusivity. A pioneer in virtual complaint resolution, she ensures swift and inclusive justice. Her work extends to child safety, providing POXO training to children, parents, educators, fostering safer environments across India. Welcome, Noopur. We are very glad to have you today with us.
Thank you, Shrimoy and Lawcubator for this opportunity. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Next, we have Chandra Bhatia. As a certified PoSH investigator and presiding officer of the IC team at Cimpress India, Chandra plays a pivotal role in ensuring compliance, fostering awareness, and proactively implementing PoSH policies. With hands-on experience in handling PoSH cases, conducting awareness programs, and strengthening workplace safety measures, Chandra is deeply committed to building inclusive, respectful, and legally compliant work environments. Beyond PoSH compliance, Chandra brings 18 years of leadership experience across industries such as manufacturing, e-commerce, ITITS, entertainment, and media. Currently serving as Associate Director of Finance at Cimpress India, Chandra oversees key governance functions, including legal, compliance, and corporate policy enforcement, ensuring that workplace safety remains a top priority at all levels. Welcome, Chandra.
Thank you so much, Shrimay. That was very kind of you for this sweet introduction. And it's my pleasure to be here.
Likewise. Next, we have Advocate Mishika Singh with us. So, Mishika is the founder of Neev Foundation for Legal Aid, which is a public charitable trust furthering the cause of legal awareness and access to equitable justice by providing legal support to the community in a safe and affordable environment. Her work has primarily been focused on the rights of women, particularly victims of domestic violence. She was on the founding team of Slut Walk India in 2011, which was the first slut walk across Asia to protest sexual violence against women who are victimized on the pretext of dressing up provocatively. At present, she is engaged in ensuring posh compliance in Delhi government schools. Alongside, she offers support as an external member to multiple organizations, both in terms of theoretical aspects of law as well as the practical training. Mishika holds a bachelor's degree in journalism and law from Delhi University and an LLM from the United Nations, where she studied transnational crime and justice. Welcome, Mishika.
Thank you, Srimoi, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's really nice that we are doing this, even though COVID is gone, but we are still emphasizing on the importance of making virtual workplaces safe. So, really happy to be here with all these women. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mishika. And we have Esha with us, Esha Nair. She's a seasoned HR professional with 15 years of experience in shaping workplace culture, talent management, and compliance. A certified HR business partner and PoSH trainer, she brings a strategic yet people-centric approach to HR management. Her expertise spans across key HR functions from strategic recruitment to meticulous payroll management. Beyond numbers and policies, Esha believes in the power of human connection. Her ability to bridge the gap between organizational goals and employee well being makes her a trusted advisor to leadership teams. With a strong commitment to workplace safety and compliance, she actively trains organizations on the PoSH Act, helping businesses lead safe and equitable work environments. Her approach blends empathy with efficiency, ensuring that HR functions are not just about processes, but about creating thriving, people first workplaces. Thank you, Esha, for joining us today.
Thank you, Srimoi. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you so much.
Sure. Now, done enough talking. Let's move on to the first round of discussion. The first round will cover, it's about adapting PoSH to the new world of work. And in this round, what we'll do is we'll try to understand how PoSH principles translate to remote and hybrid workplace. So we'll start from the foundation. So Noopur, the first question to you is, as a legal expert and the chairperson of a local committee, how do you think PoSH principles apply to remote and hybrid work environments?
Okay. Thank you for this question. So, to understand this, how the PoSH principles apply to remote and hybrid work conditions, let's go back to Vishakha guidelines. Because PoSH is actually coming from the Vishakha guidelines. They had, when the law came, it adapted the guidelines by the Supreme Court. So, see, if anyone knows the case of Bhavri Devi and what happened there, and why the Vishakha and the other NGOs went to Supreme Court. So the case was very simple. If I say in few words, I'll say that a woman who was there as an employee, she was asked to do her work, basic that You have come for the work, you have to do your duty. That in that case, it was the stopping of child marriage. She was asked to do that. And in return, retaliation to that, what she had done as the employee, she was subjected to gang rape by the other side. What she had experienced was on her because of her work. She was not gang raped at her the so-called workspace or any defined physical boundary. She was gang raped, sexually assaulted in front of her house, right? And there, from when there was the employer says we have no responsibility whatever happened to you, the Vishakha and the other NGOs went to Supreme Court asking why the working women do not have any support from the employer. Where is the responsibility of employer? And seeing that and discussing everything, Supreme Court realized yes, there is no law regarding that and laid down the Vishakha guidelines. So see, from that concept, from that moment, the concept of extended workplace has started. That workplace is not defined by the physical boundaries. Now, coming to the PoSH Act, the Sexual Harassment of Women Act, let's understand the definitions, little bit about the definitions. The sexual harassment definition, section 2N, that provided several instances what all fall under the sexual harassment. So it says physical contact and advances, demand or request for sexual favors, making sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, or any other unwelcome physical, verbal, non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. Again, physical advances is just one type. For other things, physical boundary or physical contact is not required. The second definition, which is important, is the workplace definition itself. The workplace definition, the part 2 of that, section 2 or 2, subsection 2, that also does not say the physical boundaries of this. That only provides what type of organizations, what type of sectors in which this act applies. That does not say only the physical boundaries of your office. It does not, never says that. So from going back to Vishakha guidelines, there are many High Court judgments, many Supreme Court judgments, which are actually defining the concept of extended workplace, virtual, hybrid, everything. So that is defining form like Delhi High Court in 2008, when the Vishakha guidelines were in place. In Saurabh Malik case only, they had said that the concept of workplace is not limited to physical boundaries. It is actually in Vishakha guidelines only. The Supreme Court does not want to make it pedantic, but it has to be extended to every workplace where the woman is working. So even if it is remote, hybrid, anywhere. Then later, that was in 2008, then Aisha Khatun, Kolkata High Court judgment in 2012. That also held that workplace cannot be given a restricted meaning to restrict the application within short and narrow campus. Then Jaya Kodate, 2013, again, Bombay High Court specify that. And later in the COVID times, that Sanjeev Mishra versus Bank of Baroda by Rajasthan High Court. They also, there was that was a case where the employees of a bank at two different places, Jaipur and Jodhpur, were met online remotely, and the messages were sent to the female agreed woman, and she filed a complaint. And High Court said yes, it has to be. PoSH is applicable there because the digital workplace, everyone is included in that workplace. It will be treated as one workplace. So PoSH principles is actually, it's a very, people say PoSH is vague. I'll say PoSH is actually not vague. PoSH give us room for interpretations. PoSH gives us very much room for interpretations. It is very much liberal act. It is for the benefit of the woman. So PoSH principles, so in this way, if we understand the extended workplace, the remote workplace, hybrid workplace, anything which you name is all covered under this law.
Perfect. It's actually never thought about it that way, but yes, it's pretty evident from Bhanwari Devi case only that extended workplace is included. Very nice. Thank you, Noopur. Moving on to the next question for you, Chandra. Could you highlight the kinds of behaviors that could constitute sexual harassment in virtual settings?
Thanks, Shrimay, for this question. I think it's a exhaustive list if I have to actually start listing down. However, I'll try to probably divide it into maybe three broad ways of how we look at sexual harassment or categorize sexual harassments in a virtual workplace. So, typically in a office space, like a physical office, it's easy to identify, because there's like unwelcome touching or inappropriate remarks or advances. However, in a virtual or a hybrid workplace, these boundaries kind of blur, and the behaviors that may not seem harmful at first can still contribute to a hostile work environment. And just to give you a few examples of it, like we mentioned, inappropriate or unwelcome communication could be messages. So it could be unsolicited personal remarks like, "Oh, you look gorgeous today" on a Zoom call, or maybe "that shirt makes you look handsome." So I'm looking at it from while I understand PoSH Act per se is about women, but in our organization we do follow a gender neutral policy. And to give you more examples, it could be like non-work related messages, like Noopur mentioned, sending messages to a woman, which was a case about the Bank of Baroda. There could be also things like, someone kind of stalking another coworker, like, "Oh, I'm just checking that you are still online this late." So these could be messages that could be unwelcome for the other person. Of course, sexual remarks, sexual jokes in WhatsApp groups, or maybe, like work related chat messages. It could be invitation to a one-on-one conversation which is beyond working hours, and where there may not even be a reason for an actual valid work reason to have a conversation that late in the night. And even during video calls, there could be scenarios where somebody's, let's say, sharing, like images during the meeting, or videos during the meeting, that could be offensive to some people. It could even be like the virtual backgrounds that we use in Zoom calls or Google Meet. If somebody has a background that could be like suggestive in some manner, there could be inappropriate gestures, even on a video call, like somebody who's like making suggestive facial expressions, or "Oh, pata chala." So some remarks like that. It could be things like, inviting someone to a video call under the pretext of work, but then eventually getting into their personal life. "Acha, tumhara boyfriend hai kya?" So these are the kind of things that could come up. And even it could be like a scenario where somebody uh, is stalking their colleague on social media. Like they could be going back into their postings on social media and then having a conversation about it, which people may not be okay with. Like, "Why are you digging into my old Instagram or Facebook?" It could be accessing somebody's personal data, for example, mobile number of some female colleague in the organization. If they refuse to share that, but you still go ahead and, "Acha, usne mere ko bola tha, uska number aapse lena hai." So something of that could still happen. So these are the kind of things that could potentially come up. And usually what happens is, a lot of times this may go unnoticed or unreported, because again, sexual harassment is from the perception of the victim over here. So for someone it may quantify as harassment, for others it may not. And people usually, employees usually assume that the intent matters more than the impact. However, we know that the act says the other way around, that the impact is what is material. So it's the and what can add on to it is the lack of visual cues in a virtual environment. Like, it can make difficult to judge the discomfort of the other person when you're on a phone call or on a Zoom call. And if I have to talk about it, then how organizations can ideally address this is, like, there could be clear training on digital workplace boundaries. So you can have like workplace etiquettes, like how do you interact on Slack or Teams. It could be how you interact in virtual meetings. It could be regular communication of the PoSH guidelines through some sort of posters or emailers. There could be like open hour conversations that you host in the organization. We can also encourage early intervention. Like, employees should feel empowered that, uh, if they are in a situation where they're not comfortable with the comment that they're hearing, they should feel comfortable to say that your comment made me feel uncomfortable, because before that situation even escalates any further. So these are some of the examples like I quoted, and there are ways to handle it in terms of sensitizing the employees in the organization. Thank you so
Makes
much,
sense.
Shrimati.
Yes, it's an unending list, and so many things can go wrong. In fact, there was an incident which I came to know where there was a vulgar poster on the
The
wall.
office.
Yeah, no, when somebody was doing a video call,
Okay,
just
in the background.
yeah, and that made someone uncomfortable, which could happen, which is
That's
very
possible.
much possible. It's very subtle, very tricky, in fact, because in an office space you can control certain things, but uh, here it could go out of that. Thanks, Chandra.
Thank you, Shrimati.
Moving on. So, Mishika, next question for you. How should companies manage varying workplace sexual harassment requirements when employees work across multiple jurisdictions, especially since some countries have explicit laws like the PoSH Act, while others do not?
I think to start with, Srimohi, I'll say that, in 2025, we shouldn't expect that there should be a law only then women should be protected from sexual harassment at workplace. It's basic. So I would ignore the part of jurisdictions not having the law, and I would consider that in 2025, we think that basic protection from sexual violence is something that employees are looking to give to not just women, but any employee who comes to their office. So, considering that is the mindset, I would expect companies, especially who are working at a global level where they have different jurisdictions, that is what is expected of them. Apart from that, I think what is important to consider is that where the main office is or what the base of the company or the organization looks like. If it's in India, then definitely they have to follow the law of that country. If it's a UK based organization, they definitely have to look at the UK Act, what it says about what to do in case of sexual harassment, what kind of preventive steps you have to take. So I think it's important for the organization to develop a comprehensive policy which has the baseline from all the jurisdictions that they are based in, but also has the measures that each jurisdiction especially needs. I think that is one thing that these organizations can do. I think one more important thing would be to be able to incorporate the local regulations. Like there may be some extra benchmark, like under the PoSH Act in India, there is a punishment for malicious and false complaints. If a woman files a complaint that is found to be malicious, then some penalty can be given, recommendations can be passed against her. Now, this is something additional that we've seen as a law in India. Otherwise, there's not law which punishes people for filing false or frivolous cases if we look at it generally. So, if there's some additional things like that, local regulations should be taken into consideration for people working in those specific jurisdictions or operating physically out of those separate jurisdictions. And I think for implementation of these regulations, you will obviously require regular training and awareness based on each of these jurisdictions. So you have your main global policy, which is applicable to everyone, which in all likelihood, Dancing Against 2025 should not be for only one gender, it should be gender agnostic, and trainings regarding that should be done. One more thing that I feel is important is to look at how dispute resolution is seen in each of these different jurisdictions and to take into consideration what's the best way of dispute resolution when we're looking for sexual harassment cases in an organization that works in different countries. People have different kinds of involvement in the work. People have different kind of roles. Some may be working virtually, some may be working physically. So that sort of needs to be taken into consideration while having the trainings of the internal committee members to take that um, into context. We've already discussed the definition, which has been expanded, and like Noopur very rightly pointed out, it was never supposed to be a physical workspace. So, considering that has been something that has been there since the 90s, I don't think it's a very new concept that we're dealing with, where people are in different places and they have different laws applying to them. But again, like I said, I think just the fact that we are at a place where women are in the workspace, the protection should be given with or without a law being present in a particular jurisdiction.
Thanks, Mishika. You totally summed it up in the very first sentence itself, that it is beyond one act, one country, one law. Thank you. Moving on to the next question, Esha. How can managers and team leaders be trained to recognize red flags of potential harassment in a remote setting? And how should they address such situations?
So, hi Shimoy, thank you for the question. I guess Mishika and Chandra has already answered it. If you have heard it carefully, they have already answered this question in the sense कि you cannot define a harassment कि this happens, this is harassment. If it is in posh or in harassment, if it is not defined as A for apple, B for ball, it can be A for ant, B for bat also. So, I wouldn't say train the managers, but yes, as an HR, as a people person, I would keep the open communication system alive in the organization, so that even if the employees are working remotely or hybrid or whatever it is, they are able to communicate what they are going through, any harassment of that sort. And is the manager trying to understand it, and putting in attention to it, and addressing it properly. So yes, the manager, the IC, when the IC training is done, I would also include the managers into it, so that they are also aware of what is a red flag, what is green flag, what is maroon flag, and whatever flags available. So yes, along with the IC, the manager also needs to be trained for it, how to even if someone comes, because harassment is something where not everyone would be comfortable talking in an organization. So first step would be to gain the trust of your own teammates. Only then the communication becomes easy. So yes, that would be one thing which managers should be open to. So open communication, in one word, if I say open communication, is something that needs to be alive in the organization.
Thanks, Esha. I think the point that you mentioned, that managers can also be included during the IC trainings, it's actually very practical. Why not? I mean, they should be
Yeah, why
trained.
not? I mean, they can also be the next IC member. So, they should
Absolutely.
be aware of it, what is happening and how to deal with it. It is not only, it is not the responsibility of one person or two-person. It is all of us responsibility to keep the workplace safe for everyone, not only for women, but for everyone. But today we're speaking about women, so yes, women.
Okay, this is
And
really
as Chandra said, there is no one thing that is going to cause as sexual harassment. There are n number of things. I would just add, Chandra, one more thing is, nowadays there is a new system of sending Instagram reels. Sometimes that is also offensive. Sometimes that is also not liked. So yes, that is also one
Esha.
type of harassment nowadays.
yes, many. It's evolving, the harassment part completely. Okay, moving on to the second round, where let's discuss some like how to strengthen policies and awareness. We'll address some legal complexities, policy adaptations, and proactive awareness strategies in remote setups. So back to you, Nupur. In a remote or hybrid setup, what are some legal gray areas that companies should be aware of when handling PoSH complaints, and how can they work around those?
Okay, there are few, and I'm sure if companies go with it with an open mind, go against that, they can actually resolve it. So, first is basically the constitution of IC, the gray area regarding for the remote work areas, because if you see the company, then every organization has to form the IC basing on each branch. So every branch who has, if they have more than 10, they should have IC. Now the employees are actually scattered all over places. There is no particular branch or something. So how to constitute it, and how will you say that person sitting in Delhi and can deal with the person in Kerala? There might be difficulty in language or something. So accessibility of IC is actually have to be seen in these kind of things, that your constitution should be appropriate, as well as that IC should have proper accessibility with the people, employees. So that is one area that has to be seen by the employer how to deal with it. And because in this case also they can divide it like maybe zones, maybe state wise, depend on the organization to organization, what is the structure of that organization. The second point is confidentiality. Confidentiality during the handling of complaints. Like we are sitting here, we don't know, are you alone or you have people around you? How can IC ensure that? So IC has to ensure that when we are discussing with the parties, with the witnesses, they are not tutored by anyone, because the lawyers are not allowed, but parties are smart on online virtual spaces. Okay, that lawyer won't be seen, but yes, they might be guided through that. So that has to, this is one difficulty. So employers have to make it very ensure, like employ, because the duty of employer to make a respondent and witnesses available to IC. So they have to make sure that even in virtual background they have to be alone and confidentiality has to be maintained. So that is the thing. Third point, I'll say the legal gray area. What about the different ICs? So if the employer has made 2 or 3 ICs and virtual meetings or something happened, and one IC of one particular area, and the second person respondent is actually handled by or overlooked by the other ICs. So how those 2 ICs will cooperate with each other and how will deal with that, or even with the client IC or vendor IC. So this situation happen actually at physical as well and the virtual as well. But in virtual, it will be like within the organization most probably. And the fourth most important thing, that is section 19, first clause actually, subsection 1 provides the duty of employer is to provide a safe working environment which shall include safety from the persons coming into contact at the workplace. This means third party harassment. So at virtual space, virtual workplace, hybrid workplace, how will the employer ensure that the employee sitting at a virtual setup or at home or at some workstation or co-working place, how will the employer ensure that they should not be harassed by a third party person? Because that is the extended workplace. But so employer has to, I hope that Chandra, Esha will sure throw a light on something what they can do in that as an HR person in this scenarios. So let's hear with them as well. So these are from my side a few legal gray areas which can we actually face during the virtual and hybrid setup.
Very interesting. Thank you, Noopur. I mean, I'm sure all of us are noting these points down. I never thought of a lawyer sitting in a virtual during a virtual investigation. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm sure people must have thought about it. Thanks for sharing those. Moving on to the next question, Chandra. What steps can organizations take to encourage bystander intervention and peer support in virtual work environments?
Srimay, this is a beautiful question actually, bystander intervention. Usually, we need to understand why bystanders are typically silent. So in physical offices, bystanders can overhear inappropriate remarks or they can witness some uncomfortable interaction. But in a virtual setting, harassment typically is in the form like a message or an email, which is like, or maybe like a one-on-one phone call, which makes it harder for anyone to step in. Now, there are ways to encourage bystander intervention, but to do that, it requires a bit of a training to be provided to the employees. They need to know how to recognize or identify where that harassment is happening. It could be in a very subtle form. Even Esha mentioned that it could be subtle, and it could be things like over monitoring somebody or inappropriate comments, and they need to understand how to approach that situation. It could be like a direct approach where they say directly tell the other person that I don't think that comment was appropriate, like be assertive over there. Or it could be a method of distraction where you try to change the subject and move the conversation in a different direction instead. Or it could be a scenario where you seek help from either the IC or the HR, as the case may be, where you highlight that this is a scenario that probably needs addressing in the right manner. And if I have to give you an example, so it could be where, let's say, a manager is constantly making comments about a female colleague who's joined on a Zoom call, and they look at the background that, oh, you're joining from the bedroom. That's interesting. So if somebody makes a comment like that, the other members who are part of that same call, someone should step up and intervene. But let's keep this conversation about work. The setup of anybody's virtual background or anybody's background doesn't really matter to our discussion. So being that assertiveness is essential. The other things that we can do is like having some sort of peer support networks within the organization. Like we could have voting mechanisms, channels, different types of channels which can be provided where employees can confidentially flag inappropriate behavior. It could depend whether it's a PoSH scenario, it could be a ethics scenario. So depending on that, the relevant committee within the organization can actually step up and take up the case. Uh, we can have like buddy systems where you assign employees to trusted members, trusted mentors who discuss concerns without formal complaints. So you can have like PoSH champions within your organization. So while you have the IC, you can have another set of employees who are more like the voice of the IC in the organization. The other thing can be like open forums, like we discussed earlier. So could be like 1 hour conversation or 1 hour open hour in the organization every month, where employees feel free to join and ask any questions about workplace behavior that could be on their mind. And just drawing from what Esha mentioned a little earlier, I think the role of the leadership team also matters a lot. So senior leaders should set an example by calling out any casual or inappropriate behaviors during meetings. That would encourage even the other members who are within that same meeting to, register it in their mind, and they can probably take that necessary step when the need arises to be a bystander in somebody else's, harassment situation. The other thing is, again, managers, like Noopur also mentioned that, this is something that we need to handle. Like if you have people from different organizations working with your employees, how do you respond when, someone else witnesses something that is not appropriate? So there has to be clear guidelines even for people managers, leaders, and even employees who work with third-party organizations to respond. They should know how to respond when they hear about or when they witness any kind of misconduct. So these are some ways to handle it, I believe.
Thank you, Chandra. I mean, thanks for sharing these so many strategies. I mean, it clearly shows you have thought it through so well, and that Cimpress India is doing a great job. The IC at Cimpress India. But yeah, very, very important points.
Thank you,
Okay,
Srinivas.
moving on. Mishika, next question for you. For remote or hybrid companies, what policies or structural changes can strengthen PoSH compliance?
I think first thing in this Srimoi is that there's actual redefinition of workplace. Like Nupur said, and I'm highlighting it again, that the understanding is workplace is brick and mortar. And that's what people have been understanding that since PoSH has come, since COVID has come, that's why we're looking at another definition of workplace, ignoring that the workplace has always been something that relates to your work and whatever that interaction may be. So that needs to be defined clearly. It needs to be clearly said that this also includes any interaction that you have with each other regarding the work which is outside of work, online, any digital platform. That definition is something that not sort of needs to be clearly translated in a virtual work setting, especially if the place is entirely remote. Another thing I think that needs to be encouraged is proper orientation and interaction with the internal committee. If a person is joining a remote organization, they are never going to be physically around the internal committee. That means if they have some situation, for them, internal committee people are strangers. They may not feel comfortable. They don't know what internal dynamics are. So it's important that in a virtual workspace specifically, if people are joining in their orientation, they are also introduced to the internal committee, that these are the people And there can be at the same time some videos and all that are shared to them at the time of introduction, if a training is not possible every time someone joins in, for them to go over and understand what PoSH in a virtual workspace is going to look like, apart from the basics that are already there. Another thing that I think is required is to sort of, in the PoSH policy only, identify some do's and don'ts of interaction. If LinkedIn is okay and Instagram is not, that needs to be defined. If you're doing conversations on Slack, if the meetings and everything is happening on Zoom, then what are the timings for those things to happen? Is it okay for a senior to expect you to turn up at a meeting at 11:30 p.m., which is 11:30 p.m. for people in both the jurisdictions? So things like that should be clearly defined in the policy. And this policy is not something that should be, hidden from people. They should be able to access it. So again, the internal committee needs to be made accessible in a virtual setup, and the rules that are there governing these interactions should also be made more sort of obvious and easy for people to gain access to. Apart from that, virtual training session is something that is now encouraged also, because it's better to have one training than not have anything at all. And I think now we have reached a stage where virtual training sessions, if an employer is doing it regularly, they also highlight, while the virtual discussion is on, what things can go wrong in a virtual workspace. So it's able to, we're able to explain more clearly. Like when you're saying that if there's an image over here that is objectifying women, or if it's not appropriate, I can understand much better that, okay, this can be problematic because it's impacting my workspace. So I think having virtual training sessions is something that's there. And maybe depending on what the work is, there may be need to monitor online interactions, not continuously, but there should be ways in which it can be monitored if needed. Like if there's a meeting happening between two people, maybe a person from the internal committee or the HR, whoever, should have access to the meeting in case they need to log in to, see anything of the compliances, the notes that are there. Not every meeting has to be a video recording, but at least if the audio recording is made available or things like that, those should be implemented properly in the policy, and the employees should be informed about it. So both things need to be done hand in hand to sort of make sure that in a remote workplace or a hybrid workplace, we can have proper compliance of PoSH. I think these are some practical tips that organizations can take into consideration.
Absolutely, Mishika. I got quite a few ideas from what you said for our internal committee as well. So really, thanks. Okay. Moving on to the last question for this round, for you, Esha. How do we implement PoSH compliance measures when recruitment takes place every quarter or say annually in remote or hybrid workplaces?
Okay, so Shingu, I will share you what happens in my organization when we have a recruitment happening quarterly or like 6 months. So what we do is we combine a batch of people, which includes remote people also, as well as people coming to the office. And also there are apprenticeships started right now as per the government. So we even include those apprentices because PoSH is applicable for them. So they need to be aware on that too. So we make a batch of people, say quarterly or 6 months, as per the recruitment is done. And we have a training session together. That is, the remote people join us online, and whoever in the office, we ask them to come to the conference room, and there is an introductory round of who is who and which department, so that ice is broken, because we don't want to literally start it with okay, this is PoSH and this is for sexual harassment, and we don't want to scare people. But yes, we also want them to be aware of things. And also, as Chandra and Mishika all said, that extended workplace needs to be defined. So the remote working employees is one of the extended workplace. They need to know what is the extended workplace, if they are sitting in a client place, or if we are arranging tours and if we are arranging parties, even that comes under PoSH also. That needs to be given an awareness. So yes, so we have an ice breaking session in the beginning where all of us gets introduced, and then we start the PPT. We started with the story of Bhavri Devi. We started like that, and then we show them few videos. Like it is not only an video. What we show is not necessary the person is touching or anything, but only the verbal communication he is making to the female. that is also making the female uncomfortable. Likewise, if you're sitting remote, completely remote setup is happening. Even remote people, they are like, you didn't reply to my text, मैंने कल रात को मैसेज किया था, आपने रिप्लाई नहीं किया, क्या हुआ, किधर busy हो. That is also again harassment. So remote people needs to be first told that you are also protected under the PoSH Act. They need to be aware, created an awareness on that. Second, you will have to tell them that if you face something like that, you need to talk it out. You can talk to your manager, your HR, your subordinates. So yes, so that is how we practice here. We do it as per the recruitment. If it is required, three months we do it. Otherwise, 6 months is anyways mandate.
Perfect. Thank you, Isha. Very insightful.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thank
moving on to the final round, which is about virtual complaints and best practices. So back to you, Noopur. What challenges do employees typically face in recognizing and reporting harassment in virtual workspaces? And how can IC members build trust with complainants and respondents?
Okay, so the two questions are there. uh, so actually in the first session, the earlier one session, we have discussed there are so many type of say, harassment one face in the virtual settings, but still I had seen people that when their trainings are there, we discuss the case scenarios and everything, but still people are not clear whether this will fall under sexual harassment or not. Very subtle, especially the subtle harassments. For example, I give you when the COVID started, and in fact when the workplace started, and the WhatsApp messages, uh, "Good morning, dear," with a kiss emoji, and every day morning the good morning dear, and the junior only replies good morning sir. So they don't know whether this type of good morning dear they can also file a sexual harassment or not. The concept is not clear. So that is one thing which actually people are, yes, we are in the training, we are discussing the scenarios but are we discussing those subtle scenarios as well? Generally, we are on the middle ground. We don't discuss the subtle ones, we don't discuss the very grave ones. This I had seen when we had given the trainings, or the concept of the subtle and the very grave. They believe the grave ones are to be in the criminal law only. So nothing regarding in the posh, and the subtle ones they are unsure like how to do it. So recognizing those subtle examples of sexual harassment is difficult for the employees. See, not every person is from legal background. That is the issue. People are coming from the different background. They do not know the law. They are not there to understand. So for them, might be this is just fun activity. And most of the time, I had seen the people say, right, every time they say that is not our intention. This was just a joke. And the other, even the victim also feels. I'll say the victim here that oh, the other lady, the my colleague, she was laughing. She did not had any problem. So I hope I am not the one. They will not bragged me with like you are the troublemaker. So those are the things which have to be addressed during the trainings as well, that every person has their subject. This has to can be subjective experience. So those examples have to be included definitely. Reporting again, I have got request like one day before, or this like tomorrow we have to do training. So conducted training in this, and you must have the PPT ready. Just give that training. But I always ask them, give me the details of our IC members. Because and they always, why do you need the details of IC members? And because they do not include those details of IC members. So they are giving the trainings, but they are not telling them who are the IC members where they can approach. So people are generally unaware, even despite giving trainings, where to file a complaint, whom to approach, how to write a complaint. They don't know. They will just give one line or two line complaints. I have been sexually harassed. They don't know. They have not been trained in the trainings like how to write it. they feel ashamed sometimes that how can I write nothing. When I start writing, it feels like ये तो कुछ भी नहीं है. There's nothing. मतलब anything can be there. So they don't know how to write it. They don't know where to send it. Posters are majorly missing. So even on the intranet, posters are majorly missing. Who is the IC members? Physical don't know. That is the main issues with recognizing and reporting of harassment. So first, people have to know who is the IC members. Then only the IC members can build that trust with the complainant and the respondent when the parties reach them. That is again very difficult because of that gap and accessibility between the IC members and the parties when the trust building is really difficult. Uh, because we have the habit, I think human tendency or the human mind is when we are face to face with each other, we can see the body language of that person, we can see the eyes, the face expressions, and that takes time to build trust. This is actually missing during the virtual hearings and meetings. So that is why it is very important, like the definition of IC, the constitution of IC say every branch has this, and if they do not have even the senior PO, we says at least one person should be at a branch level. That is the reason at least one IC member should be accessible to them, the party, so that they can build that trust. However, I know it is difficult in virtual scenarios that how to make that. So we have to be like constant, make the discussions will be there. Our language should be very appropriate, no stereotypical languages like will do this, females has to do this, nothing stereotypical about it. Very unbiased manner, we have to listen with patience. So we have done sessions, I have conducted, I'm part of the committees which have done virtual these complaints, handle virtual complaints, where we had actually I think set for 3 to 4 hours in one go with one of the party, maybe at night whenever they are comfortable, even if they are comfortable at their house, we have sit till 12 in the night as well to listen to them, so that they have the trust that we are here to listen to them. So IC has to find the ways for building those trust. We have to see that where they are coming from and what all apprehensions they have towards the IC.
Right, right. It basically kind of boils down to the IC only. Right. All right. Moving on. Next question for Chandra. As someone leading a remote IC, what unique challenges arise when conducting virtual inquiries, and what are some best practices you follow to overcome them?
Thanks, Srimoi. So I'll talk about the challenges that we face first. And I'm gonna draw a little bit on my experience, or draw a little bit on my, like coworkers, other colleagues in other organizations, their experiences as well while I answer this. So one basic thing is the lack of non-verbal cues. Like Noopur said, you can't see the body language. You may not be able to see discomfort or shifting eye contact or hesitation when people are speaking. And in virtual hearings, there could be technical challenges also, like poor internet connection, reluctance by the maybe the complainant to turn on the video, or complainant or respondent or witness, anybody for that matter. It could also be like how the camera is positioned. So it could be like the face is visible, the rest of the body is not visible. It could also be another, thinking of another way. So digital footprint and privacy is also another concern for employees who are more like the Gen Z kind of folks. So complainants and witnesses usually fear that, we could take screenshots or recordings, and we could probably, misuse them later on against them. It could be like they fear the risk of retaliation, which could be higher in remote workplace because informal gossip is not something you'll be able to detect. The other is where witness and complainants usually have that hesitation because they worry that, what if I am seen as being overreactive, What if my team treats me differently after I file a complaint? What if, my emails are being tracked by the organization? Now, these are just some few examples of what could add on to the challenges, but from our experience, what we've seen as best practices that helps to overcome these things are, one, you can set a clear virtual inquiry protocol, like have a defined framework, which could be part of your policy, or it could be like a separate SOP somewhere that is documented and that is available to your employees on the intranet for them to read and go through it, so that they are aware like what is the procedure that's going to happen with them. Uh, you can define virtual inquiry etiquettes like no third party attendance. Like we mentioned that some employees could try and have a lawyer in place hidden behind the virtual background, and you may not come to know. It could be like so in such scenarios, you can always ask, the whoever is being part of the hearing, you can ask them that, you need to turn off your virtual background and you need to rotate the laptop and show us 360-degree view of your room. This is one thing that can be done. Then we shouldn't ideally be allowing them to record the discussion, that the hearing. That is only the privy to the IC who can record it, unless like someone else is legally mandated it. And it is important that all the participants join from private spaces so that there's nobody else. Like if you're working in a co-working space, make sure that you have a conference room where you're attending this. Don't take it sitting on the desk. Uh, then another way of handling it is using structured interviews for clarity, where IC members, so we typically what we do is we go planned for the hearing. So you need to have structured questions and avoid subjective questions or leading questions. And it also helps to ensure that there is no bias when you're actually listening and responding during those hearings. An example could be like asking open-ended questions like fact finding could be like what was the nature and the timing of the messages that you received. You can also ask like how did that message make you feel, just to keep it like an open-ended question for them to respond. Don't ask like did you feel uncomfortable, tumko gussa aaya kya, not like that. So avoid like yes and no kind of questions. Third thing would be like ensuring confidentiality and psychological safety for the employees. So what we do is we reiterate in every communication, whether it is email, whether it is the hearings, we keep repeating something across every communication, which is the entire matter is strictly confidential, and you are also required to follow the confidentiality and not discuss anything with anyone outside the IC. And we also tell them that this same confidentiality clause is also even the IC is liable to this confidential clause, that if the IC by any chance breaches in any manner this confidentiality, then IC can also be, there could be action taken against the IC member as well. So they get that confidence. The other thing is, so a lot of organizations have these whistleblower policies like speak up hotline, or it could be like some website where you can anonymously submit complaints. Of course, anonymous complaints will not ideally come to the IC, but your goal is to build a safe workplace. So for a safe workplace, maybe some things can be taken up by a ethics committee or a disciplinary committee, but at least the end objective that your employees feel safe working in your organization, that gets met in some manner. So these are some ways that can be done. One thing that I would like to address, that we usually don't do this check in every conversation, but throughout the hearing, the entire procedure of the inquiry, which could be like maybe a month or 2 months, whatever, 3 months, whatever time it takes. So at some point in time, you might want to check on the witnesses or the complainants just to understand if they have come across any kind of behavior from anyone which feels like retaliation to them. And the organizations, global level organizations usually have these anti-retaliation policies, and we can implement something similar in your local organizations for your local locations, branches as well. And when you talk to the witnesses or even complainants, sometimes you can sense that they have a little bit of a fear in their mind. They're hesitant to speak. So you might need to encourage them. In order to encourage them, you might want to ensure that they get relevant psychological counseling wherever required, so that they have the strength to speak up when they're in a hearing. And it could be a psychological counseling, or even members from HR team can also extend that support by counseling the employees. So either ways, so these are some of the things that can be done to like try to ensure that you're overcoming those challenges.
Thank you, Chandra. Very practical suggestions. Thanks a lot for sharing these with us. Moving on to the next question for Mishika. How can organizations, we have kind of touched upon this a bit, but still, how can organizations ensure confidentiality when handling PoSH complaints in a remote or hybrid setting?
Like you said, Shimo, we discussed a bunch of it, but I'll quickly try to recapture everything that everyone said. The most important thing that Chandra and Porish, everyone's highlighted it. I think the success of a PoSH compliance in any organization is on how well the internal committee is trained. They are the ones who are actually carrying the weight of making sure the compliance is proper, the investigations are proper, the sessions are getting done. So the internal committee has to be properly trained in understanding how confidentiality, it's not just a moral wrong to be violating that, but legally also it has its repercussions. Then I think one thing that I've seen in a virtual workspace working well is having a dedicated email ID where complaints can go. Like if there's one at my organization, then it will be internal committee at Neev Foundation at gmail.com or whichever ID I want to use, so that the entire internal committee can be accessible from one email ID. I don't have to see कि अच्छा committee में अब who should I message? Is this person better or that person better? Same can also be done on WhatsApp. But these dedicated emails, the idea should be that no one else has access to it. Sometimes on our organizational emails, the other people also have access to it. So the purpose is to ensure confidentiality and to let them know that this email ID is not regulated by other people in the company. Only the internal committee has access to it. Similarly, whatever information is being gathered, like Chandra said, if the meetings are being recorded, if notes are being made, all of that, if it's uploaded on cloud, it should be password protected. Only the internal committee members should have a right to it. All of these things should be highlighted in your PoSH policy and in the trainings that you do, so that people have the confidence that yes, my identity will be protected even if I decide to file a PoSH case. So just having them is not important. Communicating the same to the staff and communicating the same to anyone else who joins or is a part of the workplace becomes important. Apart from that, confidentiality protocols I highlighted on the posters as well. Noopur spoke about posters not being there at enough places. So you have an internal committee, but no one's told you how to approach them, how to contact them. In those posters also, I think it becomes very important to highlight that if you are a part of a PoSH proceeding, whether you filed the complaint or it's been filed against you or you've called as a witness, everything that happens between you and the internal committee is absolutely confidential. I think the confidentiality part needs to be emphasized more beforehand, because it sort of gives the aggrieved woman the confidence to come out and report harassment. If the confidentiality clause is not highlighted everywhere, if it's not put out in their faces that, hey, this is something that we're going to take care of because legally we are supposed to, that sort of discourages people, that, like we discussed earlier, कि मेरे बारे में क्या बोलेंगे, will I be reprimanded, will people treat me differently? I think these are some 4-5 things that can be done in a virtual workspace to ensure that confidentiality is taken care of.
Very rightly said, Mishika. Not just following the protocols, but actually communicating them. Very, very important. All right, Esha, the final question for you. What are the ways to keep remote employees engaged in PoSH awareness initiatives beyond mandatory training sessions?
So as I told you before that, what we follow over here, like showing videos, apart from the normal PPT, jo PoSH ke liye we use it. Apart from that, if you have some videos, real life examples, if it is possible for them, because PPT, only viewing the PPT becomes a little boring. It doesn't, grasp the attention, what you want, make it, anyways, PoSH is a sensitive issue and, not many, I would say, comfortable listening, or, so you need to make it interactive. You need to first show it that PoSH is, even though if it is a gender biased law, we also have workplace harassment policy in place, which is not gender biased. You need to introduce that to your employees, be it remote or be it sitting in the office people. And not only the, you can say, the even the you can say the office boy, the office girl, or all are covered under the same policy. It is not gender biased in any ways. It is for everybody. You need to create an awareness on that, and you need to get that attention from both the people, not only remote. Even the people sitting in the office, sometimes they are like, "अरे हम क्यों बैठे? हमारे लिए थोड़ी है ये तो लड़कियों के लिए होता है." So that you need to pick up the straw कि नहीं, listen, there is something for you people also. It is, we HR people are very nice, and we have also created a policy for work harassment policy that is not gender biased. So we are also introducing that, and you can even if men are going through the harassment, they can put a complaint. So we get a attention, we grasp it ki theek hai, ma'am is thinking about all of us, and this session is for all of us. And the types of harassment, as Chandra said, it is not only touching, pinching, or keeping hand. That is not the only harassment we face. Sometimes a message, a good morning message, as Noopur said, a good morning message is more than enough to traumatize people. Even a good night message is, you stalk someone online, or you follow them from office to their place. That is again harassment. You need not touch, or you need not say anything, but yes, that is an harassment. You need to create an awareness for that. So real life video examples, we have a lot of YouTube videos out right now, so that awareness is given. And by that time, as an HR, I feel that people are instantly connected कि okay, ऐसा भी होता है, ऐसा भी हो सकता है. So they are connected. Then I'll just drop a hint on what we do in the end is, we do show real life examples. After that, we just say that we understand as HR, as human beings, we understand that harassment, talking about harassment is not easy. But then we have something in our organization called Coffee with HR. So it is, it attracts immediately. Coffee with HR, oh, ma'am, kuch hamper de rahi hai shayad se, like Karan Johar, she's also distributing some hamper. So it creates an attraction. And then we you want to speak out something. Maybe your sir is troubling you, your ma'am is troubling you, or maybe ghar pe kich kich chalu hai. Talk anything with your HR, she will just listen to you. So that way we build a trust key, okay, so the employees can talk it out. And then we sometimes we do get these coffee with HR meetings with us, and sometimes it becomes ki, okay, people are going through it. It not only relates with the posh thing or the harassment. Even if they are sensing a burnout, or they're stressed, or they can talk it out. So that becomes easy for me as a posh trainer in the organization to grab attention of everyone. And plus the awareness is given to everybody. Also, then there is sometimes I do is, instead of reading out the PPT on my own, I ask someone to get up, read it, and like the unwelcome behavior, the welcome behavior, that is being enacted in the organization ki one person reads the welcome behavior. So when we read about welcome and unwelcome, the tone becomes positive, negative, and that is how an awareness also goes to what is welcome and what is unwelcome behavior. So that is applicable to both remote and the employee sitting in the office. So that is how we do it here. Rest, I think all the three people, Chandra, Noopur, Mishika, has explained rest everything very more, briefly and elaborately everything. So I am just putting, you can say, dhania to the khichdi. The khichdi is already being prepared. So
Thanks,
yes.
Esha. But your dhania, that is coffee with HR, I think is an excellent final,
Yeah,
garnish.
that is just a tip from my end. Many HRs, if they're sitting, they can try it out. It works. It works out. It is like a way of building trust to the employees that जिसका कोई नहीं उसका HR. So yes. अगर
That
आपका
is the way it should be. Yeah.
yeah. So
Perfect.
we are open for it, and we do get coffee with HR. So I can't say it is fun, but at least we have people talking out, and it is a good sign. So if people are talking it out, that means it is a good sign. So I won't say
Absolutely
it is
fantastic.
fun, or it is enthusiastic wala kaam. No, it is not. It is sometimes very overwhelming for us also. But then yes, if that is a way to get people talking, so then that it is.
Love it. Really love it. Thank you so much, Esha.
Thank you.
All right, we are slightly, it's 4:10. But anyway, we'll open the floor for audience questions. If you have any questions for our panelists, please drop them in the chat. We'll try to address as many as possible. If not,
One thing I'd like to add, Shimue, if that's
sure.
possible, to the previous question when we were talking about how to ensure confidentiality. I'm on the external committee of a lot of organizations. So one thing I also encourage is that if the employees are not comfortable in speaking out to someone from the internal committee, they also can access the person from the external committee directly. What it does is that in case people are undecided, what Nupur was saying कि समझ में ही नहीं आता है बहुत बार कि harassment हुई भी है कि नहीं हुई है. That understanding sometimes is missing, and they don't want to speak to someone thinking that, what if I make a big deal out of it, or what if it's something that I'm misunderstanding and I don't want to discuss it with someone in the organization. So if we can connect them to the external person is there, I think that's helpful.
Absolutely. It feels safer somehow, unbiased, I'm saying. Absolutely. Okay, so Chandra, we have a question for you from Rucha. What if an employee claims they were joking or misunderstood in a virtual setting?
Yeah. Thanks, Rucha, for that question. In a virtual setting where tone and intent can easily be misinterpreted, I think it's crucial to focus on the impact of the behavior rather than the intent. What one person sees as harmless joke, another person might actually perceive it as offensive or uncomfortable, especially in text-based communication where there are no verbal cues. If an employee claims they were joking or they are getting misunderstood, the IC should ideally assess a few things like what was the context and the content of whatever messages were sent. Was it inappropriate, sexual, or demeaning in nature? Is there a pattern of behavior, or is it like a one-time incident that happened? It could be response from the complainant, that did the recipient express discomfort or ask for it to stop. So these are few things that the organization should encourage employees to adopt, like a respect first kind of an approach. If a joke or comment has the potential to offend, I think it's best to leave it unsaid. I mean, like a simple principle to follow is would this joke be appropriate in a physical office setting or in front of a diverse audience? So even if the intent was not malicious, the company must take such complaints seriously, and the IC should recommend sensitivity training or have a discussion on workplace communication etiquettes to prevent future issues in the similar nature.
So we have two more questions. The second one is, may I know from Diksha, may I know how can new HR who has joined the organization recently escalate to CEO on PoSH policy when the manager has harassed an employee and he's very close to CEO? Would any of you like to take it up, Esha, Noopur, Mishika?
I think I can take it up. My understanding is that there's a new HR and they have gotten to know that the manager has harassed an employee and they want to escalate this to the CEO because the CEO is close to the manager. Is that the correct understanding of the question? Okay. So in that case, Diksha, the process will still need to be followed. The person who has been harassed will have to file a written complaint to the internal committee. However, if the person feels that the internal committee is likely to be biased because the manager that they are reporting to is close to the person who's accused, or if they for any reason feel that the internal committee is not in a position to do an unbiased inquiry, they may ask for, if there are more than 4 members, recusal of some members and the other people that they're okay with may continue with the inquiry, or they may not subject themselves to an internal committee inquiry if they don't have the confidence in it. But the part of escalating it directly to the CEO, I'm not very sure. But eventually, if the internal committee gives the recommendation that yes, sexual harassment has taken place, that recommendation will go to the CEO, who is the implementing authority anyway. I'm not sure if I've been able to understand and answer properly, but from my limited understanding of the question, that is the way we can go about it.
Thanks,
I would just add, I'm so sorry, Noopur, you're talking.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. I would just add on that, even if the accused is a CEO, I think PoSH is still, and the victim has complained. So I think it should be taken up. I mean, it is not just because वो CEO के close है, so we can leave him leniently. That shouldn't be the approach. If the PoSH policy is in place, it has to be taken up like that also. Like it is not biased as per the designation or closeness to the higher authorities or upper management. It shouldn't be biased as per that. If the victim has raised a complaint, it should be filed, is what I believe. You can correct me, Noopur, Mishika, and Chandra, if I.
No, you are right, Esha. Yes. If the
Another
complaint is
question.
filed, it
Yes.
has to be taken up. Yes,
Yeah.
Shrimoy, please.
Nupur, would you like to address the next question, which is from Esha? How can IC members conduct an inquiry against a third party who is not a part of the organization? Let's say a visitor or delivery boy.
So actually, IC cannot. So Section 11 of the Act specifically say it the IC of the respondent actually conducts the inquiry. Complainant IC cannot do the inquiry against the vendor or third party. I say if you know like there's a delivery boy or the what example is the visitor. So visitor, if they are the work visitor, not the like family or friend of anyone, but due to the work scenario, they had come to the workplace. You can file, the complainant can file the complaint. They can file it with their IC, and their IC has to take up with the IC of the respondent, because the implementation, the recommendations which has to be given, the logic behind is because the whatever recommendations IC has to give has to be implemented by the employer, and the respondent employer has the authority over the respondent. IC of complainant, if they say that okay, we say that terminate the respondent who is the third party, why will that employer agree with that? Okay, so these are very actually questions which are pertinent, but for that we actually, I started suggesting with the, when we talk with the employers and the organizations and HRs, that start incorporating PoSH clause in your agreements with your clients, with your vendors. Start incorporating that, what the clause regarding PoSH complaint, how will that it will be handled if there is a PoSH case between employees of two organizations. But with a delivery boy or visitor, right now I'll say you cannot. However, if you see the Ola case, so Ola is a third person, and the Karnataka High Court case and the single judge had held that Ola drivers are employees of that company. So the passenger who is sitting there, who is a third person there, if he or she get harassed, or she, I'll say, because that's not gender neutral, so she get harassed, she can file complaint with Ola. So these you have to, there are different scenarios which has to be keep in mind.
Right. We'll quickly try to address the rest of the questions. Do cultural differences affect IC inquiry? How can this integrated in the trainings?
I can take this. I can sum it up in like, I'll keep it very short. So, Priyanka, thank you for the question. Actually, cultural differences definitely have an impact on interpersonal relations within the organization. Someone may be okay with putting their hand on someone else's shoulder while talking, but for someone else, it may be uncomfortable. Trainings need to incorporate these things in the internal trainings as well as staff trainings. It's important to talk about intention and impact, and it's important to talk about personal boundaries. What also needs to be sort of emphasized in trainings is that some advances and some touches which may be culturally okay, like maybe me coming to office and hugging all my coworkers is an okay thing for me, but not okay for one of the coworkers that I'm hugging. These things need to be expressly told that this is unwelcome, because some things may be culturally okay, but if someone is coming from outside of that place, it may not be okay for them. So in training specifically, these kind of things should be taken into consideration. What Nupur also said, that sometimes people just say, "Ek ghante ka posh training hai, you come and do this training." It's very important to understand who you're training, what their dynamics are. Otherwise, 1 hour you are wasting your time and their time. They are not understanding anything, they're not learning anything. So it's definitely very, very important to have cultural differences incorporated in your internal committee training as well as your staff training.
Right. A follow-up question from Diksha. After the employee has filed a written complaint, yet the manager behaves the same, very rude, as he's a close buddy. Can you help me with solution?
I can take this also if no one else is taking it. Is that
Mishika,
okay?
it's a follow-up question of the first one, so please.
Acha, I was reading this one after the employee has filed a written complaint, yet the manager behaves
Yes,
the
yes.
same.
The
This sounds
CEO,
like a
manager
reprimand
and
only to
CEO
someone
closes.
who's complaining. Okay, this is the same. Oh, this is a follow-up to that only. I think,
Right.
Diksha, in this case, if the written complaint has been filed against the manager and is behaving a certain way that is not okay, the internal committee can be informed, and the internal committee has the power to take some interim measures. If they think that during this investigation the person should be given work from home, or they should not be made to work with the person who's filed the complaint, they should be in separate teams. All those decisions the internal committee can take. So this has to be highlighted with the internal committee, and they will be responsible for taking interim measures so that the complainant is not reprimanded for anything.
How does IC help if harassment has happened from a person not in the same organization?
Probably take that up. Thanks, Priyanka, for that question. Many organizations usually work with third-party vendors, freelancers, partner firms, consultants in a hybrid setting. Now, if an employee is facing harassment from someone who's not part of the same organization, the PoSH law still provides protection to that person. Um, so the ideal way to handle that would be where the victim's employer first they have to accept and listen to the complaint, listen to what has happened to them. Next they can then get in touch with the organization of the respondent. They will have to get in touch either through their HR or through and somehow get in touch with the IC of the respondent's organization and escalate the matter to them. If cooperation is refused, then the case can also be escalated to the local committee. Many organizations now also include PoSH clauses, as we just mentioned. They include PoSH clauses in vendor contracts stating that harassment allegations involving their employee will be taken seriously and investigated jointly. This is something that you can mention in your legal agreements. This ensures accountability across companies, whoever you partner with. Another thing that I want to add to this is about the principal employer. So usually there would be scenarios where you've got people from the consultant working in your office, as well as along with your employees. And let's take an example of a housekeeping staff. Now, when there's a housekeeping staff, for that person, your organization is the principal employer. And as a principal employer, it is your responsibility to handle that case, to ensure that due procedure is followed and you follow the inquiry proceedings.
Right. One final question from Sneha. What if the complainant doesn't know how to write or is not literate?
Can I take that?
Yes,
Sure.
Esha.
I think there is a provision in PoSH that if suppose you are not literate or you are not of mental health wise, so you can have a help. You can ask help for either your HR or your friends or your relatives. They can help you out.
So in this case, actually, Isha just want to add that the provision is that if the complainant does not know how to write or do not know how, because they generally do not know how to frame the questions, how to frame the scenarios, then they can ask the help of complaints committee, basically the internal committee, and internal committee has to guide them. The friends and family are actually in case when they are not able to make a complaint due to their mental or physical issues or in case of death. But in other cases, any complainant can actually approach to complaints committee, internal committee, and ask them to help them how to write a proper complaint. And then members of the complaints committee have to assist them in writing.
Right. Thanks, Noopur. A huge thanks to all our fantastic speakers for sharing their valuable insights today. And thank you, audience, for joining us. We hope this discussion has provided you with practical strategies to enhance PoSH compliance in remote and hybrid workplaces. Stay connected with us for future Safe Workplaces dialogue session. where we'll continue exploring critical topics on workplace safety and compliance. Thank you so much. Have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Everyone,
much.
thank you for joining in.
Thank you.